Now, I want you to be clear on one thing because I don't want it to be missed. You must deliver a believable reason why there's urgency. It has to be believable. And I have news for you. And if you've been a child, and if you're now an adult, you know this to be true. You may not have thought about it this way, but I will tell you that the most important point I can tell you is believability is not the same as telling the truth. Propaganda has been believed for years, caused wars, caused destruction, caused genocide. Propaganda many times is more powerfully believable than the actual truth. Sometimes the truth can take 2,000 years to be believed. I've made $1.2 million in less than 29 minutes. That's not believable for many people when I say it, even though it's true. So don't confuse the truth with being believed. Be believed first, and then tell more of the truth so that you create seeding. You have breadcrumb navigation so they actually believe you. Most important line all day. This should be an Alexism. Believability is not the same as telling the truth. You know, I apologize in advance if that's a tough pill to swallow, but grow up and understand it. Because the moment I grow up and took that red pill, then I realized that I need to be believable while telling the truth. And some people tell the truth, but it's not believable because it's a truth that needs a lot more time and credibility and relevance to be consumed. So let's look at how you can make things urgent, which is why I'm spending so much time on this formula. There's time scarcity. Time scarcity, what is that? Time scarcity is, let's say you have a product launch, which my good friend Jeff Walker and his brother John helped develop, Jeff mostly, and they called it the product launch formula. I think it was sometime around 2010. He did my final product launch for Teleseminar Secrets, which was a $14 million exchange I had for 5 years. But I didn't do it the way he taught it. And his product launch formula is brilliant. It takes somewhere between 10 to, I've seen as much as 20 days. And there's a building of relevance and credibility and urgency. Now, time scarcity, you need a reason why. We know that if you have something that's called the product, the pre-launch content 1, it could be a video, and pre-launch content 2, and pre-launch content 3. I have a good friend, Pete Vargas, who used a name I gave him an idea for called the 1 hour launch, and he teaches people how to get on stage. He has credibility of getting 25,000 people on stages in just over a decade, right? Brilliant teacher. Well, time scarcity, when we were talking about, and I was assisting him, as was actually one of my students who's now my teacher in his area of expertise, Stu McLaren. He used to work for me. He just knows so much about membership sites, and he's part of some great masterminds that have just has elevated not only his income, but his reach, his relevance, and the urgency for people to do business with him. Stu helped my friend Pete with this launch, and I thought it was done masterfully. But here's the thing. What is the time scarcity of the shopping cart closing? Because you got to stick with it. And Stu was emphatic about this. And I am too. When the time is up, it's up. And that's why we call it a countdown timer. Now, that's an influence, but that's not the reason why. Here's the reason why for time scarcity if you're a teacher like me and a trainer. The reason why we can't take anyone else after this date is we are beginning the fulfillment process the very next day. So in order for you not to get left behind, in order not to screw things up for us, in order for you to learn properly and get your money's worth, this is the deadline. If it's not the right time, that's your problem, not ours. And if we have the relevance and the credibility for you to say yes, but not the urgency at this time. You can't borrow the money from your grandparents or friends or whomever, but you don't want to do the payment plan, then all bets are off. Because here's the reason why, we're fulfilling the next day. I have friends who won't take people, even if they threw an extra $1,000, because it's too much of an inconvenience. It costs more to handle that one person than the 500 or 1,000 other people who said yes. So that's a good reason why for time scarcity. You can think of more reasons. Another one is quantity scarcity. In my hands, I'm holding an old iPod with an old picture of me. And this is over 12 years old. And this iPod was pre-filled by over 1,500 hours of content back then of mine. Now, the iPod, people were really big on. You know, it was called an iPod Nano. And I called it not an iPod, but a Learn Pod, because I wanted one iPod for music, one iPod for learning. So I called it a Learn Pod. I thought it was clever. I love sounding smart, and it worked. So I bought over 4,000 over a 3-year period, and people started to get the idea. In fact, U2, the rock band, they filled an album into an iPod. And I was pre-filling iPods before then. Now, to get an iPod wholesale back then was very, very expensive. It's not an MP3 player. It's a sexier version from Apple. And Steve Jobs' office called me and said, "Who are you? You're buying more than some of our electronic store chains like Best Buy." And I could swear I heard Steve Jobs in the background, but he wasn't on the phone. And I told him that I was a speaker. And here's what I would do. I would take somewhere between 35 to 45 of these preloaded iPods, which were worth a lot of money. There's over $2,500 worth of content here. And when I sold Teleseminar Secrets, which was one of my courses, or Virtual Book Tour Secrets, another course, or Stick Strategy Secrets, yet another course. I have a lot of secrets courses. When I sold them from stage, I would say there are 35 of these in the back of the room. And the first 35 get these being the Nano. Now, it takes a lot of effort and time for me to fill these things. And it did. It's repackaged with my picture on it. And it's expensive. You know, like you have to, it's not like something made in China. I mean, well, it is made in China most likely, but it was made through an American company. So it was harder to upload. And my good friend Dan Safko used to do it for me. And I told this whole story. And I made it believable. It was the truth, but I made it believable. There's only 35. I got 35 people in less than 5 minutes before I even made the offer because of the premium. That's called quantity scarcity. Now, are there other ways to do it? Yes, there are. Many people do lie about it. By the way, a lie can be believable. A lie can be believable. Mom, I made my bed. Okay. It was a lie most of the time, but I made it believable because I tried to give her my puppy dog eyes, and she was too lazy to go upstairs and check. But Mom, I took out the garbage. That was a lie. 50% of the time, I was lying to my mom, right? But it was believable because of the way I delivered it. I'm not saying for you to do that. I'm saying don't confuse the truth with believability. Focus on believability first. Most important thing I've said. Next, limited edition. If you have a collector's item of something, right, and it's hand signed. So let's take my book, Alexisms. I don't know why it's so valuable to people, but when I go overseas, I'm talking Brazil, India, Asia, my mother, Carol, which I'll come back, my sales trainer growing up, she can't understand why anyone would listen to me for more than 5 minutes. It used to be 3 minutes. Then she heard me on stage and she said, okay, 5 minutes. Now, this book is worth not much to people. But when I sign the book and I offer it as a bonus and I've trained them for 5 days and I have credibility and relevance, then it becomes my urgency tool. If I'm signing it and taking a picture with them, which I've done, and I've signed over 125 with my friend Leandro over in Brazil, by hand signing it, now it's limited edition. That is believable and genuinely reason why scarcity. Okay, I've given you enough examples. Yes? Now, if I haven't, coach with us, and then I'll give you more. Okay?